see now. Papa got bitch making headlines. Come down. Ooh, you make my high come down. Always tripping when you come around. Never have to cut you out like right now. You see, I don't have to drive me. You can say that for your mama. Maybe you should smoke some. Me try the marijuana. I was never you good. The vibe was straight. Shows you a couple of things and they feel the change. I treated you right. Everything was a gift from a time to your bag and the color on your lip.
Welcome to the Seahawks Man to Man podcast, powered by The Athletic. Shout out to the company. My name is Michael-Shawn and I'm here with my co-host, Christopher Kidd. Make sure you follow us both up on the tweet machine. I'm going to shout out the YouTube channel right quick for everyone who's listening right now, Spotify, Apple, whatever. Remember, we are on YouTube, Seahawks Man to Man. And for you guys watching, what up? Nice to see you. Chris, talk to him.
What is up, everybody? It's your boy, Christopher Kidd. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at CKIDD206, and that's CKid206.
I said, nice to see y'all. We can't see y'all, but you know what I mean.
I'm looking into the camera. I see you guys.
I feel like I can see you guys. You guys send in questions. You got your profile pictures. We can see. I feel like this is a community space. We love you guys. But anyway, welcome back. It's our first official off-season episode of the year. We are coming to you guys the day that the Seahawks officially announced that they have fired defensive coordinator Ken Norton Jr., also fired defensive passing game coordinator Andre Curtis. That would happen Tuesday. How long has Ken been here? About 4 or 5 years. Andre's been here a little longer than that. Both of them let go. This is kind of following a pattern that Pete Carroll has had in years where the Seahawks don't make the playoffs. He looks around. He's like, well, look, I'm not going anywhere. So somebody else has to go. If you guys remember, me and Chris did a pod after the 2017 season when they didn't make the playoffs, and Pete got everybody up out the paint. He fired Darrell Bevell, fired Tom Cable, fired defensive coordinator Chris Richard, and that final move is one that we weren't a fan. We weren't a fan of that one, right? Like we put that on wax. I remember me and you personally saying that we put that on wax, though, right? That we weren't.
We did.
Chris Richard. We just didn't think it made sense. It was like their defense is not going to get like markedly better if they get rid of Chris Richard. And what do you know? It didn't. But there's two comparisons I want to make here as we dive into like what do Mike and Chris think about this. The one is Chris Richard, because I really feel like we couldn't have expressed that enough. Like that it was like that didn't seem like it was going to make anything better. It really and it didn't. I even ran into Chris Richard at the combine maybe 2 years later when he was working for Dallas. I want to say I was like, bro, what the hell? He was like, man, Chris Richard was like, and it just we talked for a little bit. I won't tell you, I won't say what he said, but we were seeing eye to eye. He rocked with us, in our opinion. Let's put it that way for reasons that made sense. But then here we go to, and last year they fired Shoddy. Chris are like, well, what's that gonna do? And it really didn't do much. The offense was about as good or bad as it's been. It had most of the same flaws. It just dressed it up against a few different teams and it was a little different, right? So I say all that to preface this Ken Norton discussion, because when people have asked me what I think, because it's basically broke Monday night. Shout out to Bob Condotta and Adam Jude at the Times, got the good scoop on that. They scooped it while I was in the middle of my drinking game with the Russell Wilson Manning cast on Monday Night Football. So that was a little rude by Bob and Adam. No heads up from them. That's cool, guys, whatever. But as people have asked me about it, it's like we're right back where this is Shoddy all over again to a lesser extent. And to explain that a little bit, when you have when you have a head coach who has an offensive philosophy, whatever that is, whether that's run the ball, throw the ball, doesn't matter. When you have the same quarterback, in this case it's Russ, your offense ain't going to change but so much. I've said this before. If I was the OC in Seattle, if Chris was the OC in Seattle, if my loud-ass neighbors upstairs were the OCs in Seattle, and you had Russ and Pete, the offense is going to have the same problems and the same strengths. By and large, few scheme tweaks here and there, right? The defense is in a very similar place. You have Pete Carroll and his core philosophies. Who we got? Rush the passer, without blitzing. What else Pete like to do? Limit explosive pass plays. I'm missing a big one. Oh, turnovers. He wants turnovers, right? Those three things for the most part is what he wants. Oh, and stop the run. That's it. Those are the core things. Like, let's do that no matter what. Whether we're playing football in the 1800s, the 1900s, or the 3000s, those are the cores that Pete has. All right, cool. Pete also oversees personnel. So it's like, here, I pick the guys. I have the philosophy. Do what I say. Chris, you could be the defensive coordinator and do that, and you're going to have the same problems. If I give you the same pass rushers and the same linebackers and the same DBs, you're going to go out there and you're going to have the type of defense Ken Norton had. I feel like we're in the same spot. When did Shotty get fired? What, a year ago, last week or something like that? Like, we're damn near 12 months to the damn day, probably. I could look it up. And here we are. We're right back.
Back to
on the
square
other side,
one.
talking about the same Pete firing the coordinator. That feels like it's not going to be the impactful move that this team needs to get over the hump.
Yeah, we talked about it off wax, and the question is, okay, who do you bring in? What are they going to bring to this defense that we haven't seen, or that's going to make this defense pop? Meaning, by pop, I mean better. What's going to have this defense getting after the quarterback, forcing turnovers, stopping the run consistently? Because the first half of the season, it's been a pattern the last 2 seasons for sure. The first half of the season, not so much getting to the quarterback. Pass rush isn't where it needs to be. Turnovers, not really there. Then the second half of the season, things flip. Oh, we had a big meeting. Bringing in guys in 2020, excuse me. They had a big meeting. Mm-hmm. Players come together. They rally. Oh, look at that. The defense, some things just clicked. This past season, Carlos Dunlap, he's not being used the way he should be. He has a conversation with Pete Carroll and a couple other guys stating, hey, what's my role? Well, this is how I think I can better this defense. What do you know? Carlos Dunlap, Rasheem Green, a bunch of other guys step up. Defense finds a rhythm. And here we are in 2022. No defensive coordinator at this moment. I'm sure the Seahawks are working to find someone, but it's kind of back to square one of, okay, well, what's going to change? As Mike mentioned, philosophy is probably going to be the same. Whoever you bring in is going to run Pete's defense, just as we saw with the offense. Whoever they bring in is going to run Pete's offense. Nothing's changed. I don't even want to say it's a remix. It's the alternate version.
You can call it the remix. We'll call it the remix.
I guess, but what's going to change? Just the name of the D coordinator that comes in, because ultimately we're based on what we're seeing with this defense. They play a lot of cover 2. They played everything. Mike and I talked about it. They play a little bit of everything last season, but Pete's main thing is cover 3. They don't have the defense to do that. They don't have the coverage to be able to play cover 3 where they just send 2 corners deep and your middle safety, and that's it. They don't have that luxury right now. They're looking to get back to that, but if you bring in a new defensive coordinator, well, what's he going to be left with? The same issues that Ken Norton Jr. was having. Now this becomes an uphill battle. Unless you're banking on the Seahawks having talent, being able to get guys in free agency, being able to draft guys, and coming in and making this defense better than what it has been these last 2 to 3 seasons, I don't know if getting rid of Ken Norton was the all-end-all answer.
And I should say this. I don't know if Chris shares this opinion, but I've been asked about Ken before all the time, really. Mostly in some of those years where they were really bad. Like 2019, that defense was not good. Like they needed trading for Quandre to save their ass. Like hopefully people didn't forget how that went. It was not going well. And I think in 2020, we all remember that first half of that season, they were just god awful. They were like that. The defense was so bad that the guys on defense were mad after they were winning. Like I remember after the Cowboys game, Shaq's up there like, man, we didn't play well. It's like, well, you won. It's like, yeah, but not because of us, even though Ryan Neal sealed the game with an interception in that. But that was just one example where it was like, dang, man, like we're not playing well on defense and we're winning, but they were so upset even when they were winning. That's how big of a deal the defense was. When people have asked me, I've kind of made this pretty clear. Like, I don't think we really know what Ken is or is not doing, and what Pete is or is not doing. On some, like, people have complaints and legitimate complaints. Like we've talked about them. I think their 2-minute defense has usually been trash.
They do too much prevent.
Yeah, they get real preventy and then end up giving up points, which is the opposite of they're not preventing anything. I guess they're preventing a touchdown. The pass rush has been non-existent since the Frank trade, and even a little before that. Basically, since Mike Bennett got traded, the pass rush has basically been non-existent outside of that second half of the 2020 season when they just caught fire and were like the best pass rush in the league. Other than that, pretty been non-existent. Yeah, they just do some things. I've had my complaints, but I really think we don't know who's in charge of what, who's putting who out there. You know, like I think one of the questions we got last week, someone asked, what are 3 questions you would tell Jody to ask Pete Carroll and John Snyder if they sat them down? And I think one of them I suggested was like, hey, I need to know who's been drafting because one of you guys needs to get fired, right? Because you're not drafting well. The same thing would be with some of the critiques there. If you ask me if I want to get Pete and Ken in the room, but I want to ask you guys, okay, so who stuck with Trey Flowers that long? Like, one of you guys needs to go. I don't really care who it is.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna say it's probably Pete.
I think that was Pete too, but I don't know. But it's stuff like that. It was like, all right, who did that? Because everyone and their mama knew starting 2021 that was not like you guys have ridden this thing out too long. You've already benched the man twice, and now you're putting him back out there, and it was a disaster 3 weeks in, and everyone's like, guys, we could have told you this 3 weeks ago. Like, I need to know who's doing stuff like that. I think also in that answer last week, I was like, okay, who's been drafting the DBs for the past, I don't know, everybody since Jeremy Lane? Like, who's been doing that? Whoever been drafting those guys, maybe you should go. You know, not the guy who's, you know, if you give me, like, look at this year, right? And I've talked to some people about the firing. Sorry, I didn't make my point about Ken. My point about Ken is I've kind of come to the conclusion that, like, I don't think he was the problem. You know, like I said, I don't think firing him does much. Firing Andre Curtis, I don't know how much that does either. We know very little about what Ken does. We know even less about what
I'll be honest. I know nothing about what Mr. Curtis does with that.
And I talk to Dre all the time. We're not like homies, but you see, I just called him Dre. You know, like,
what up, Mike?
Clearly, like, he knows my name and everything. You know, so like,
have I seen him, Mike? Can you give me that info? Have I seen him before? I had to have. I just didn't.
Yeah, he'd be out there. This year. He was the only one wearing a mask. He was the only coach wearing a mask.
I didn't catch that.
Stocky, dark-skinned brother with the. I think he has waves. Kind of grayish black hair. But yeah, But I barely know what he does. Not to say he was doing nothing. It's just like we don't get a lot of insight into what the coordinators and some of the position coaches are responsible for. But like, I don't think Ken was necessarily the problem. At the same time, I think it's fair to say, like, he was not going to coordinate a championship caliber defense. In that regard, he wasn't the answer either. You know, I think that's probably safe to say. But then again, I could have told you that 3 years ago, probably after the 2019 season. You know, like, yeah, he's probably not the problem. They probably have bigger problems, which they did. And he's probably not the answer either. But I would sit them down, Pete, and like Ken, like, all right, if I'm gonna decide who goes here, tell me who was responsible for the 2017 draft. Go.
Tell the truth Tuesdays.
And I think Ken wasn't even there. So that would be my conclusion. Like, hey, man, you know what? Here, Chris, I'm going to read some people.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to read.
This is going to get ugly.
I'm going to read every defensive player drafted from 2013 to 2017.
Oh, it starts with Jordan Hill. This gets good.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go in order of, what should I go? Year? Yeah, let's go in order of year. Let's do that. So we got defensive tackle Jesse Williams, some guy named Jared Smith, Ty Powell, Thorold Simon, Jordan Hill, Jimmy Staten, I don't know, Eric Pinkins, Cassius Marsh, Kevin Pierre-Louis, Christian something, I don't know, some defensive tackle in 2015, Ryan Murphy, Obum, some guy in 2015, some defensive end, Ty Smith, Frank Clark, Quentin Jefferson, Jaron Reed, Mike Tyson, Nas Jones, Lane O'Hill, Malik McDowell, Tedrick Thompson, Shaquille Griffin. Chris, how many good players did I just name? Guys who were good while they're with the Seahawks.
I would say Shaquille Griffin is one.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to say Nas, but he didn't play enough, so I can't do that. No. I'll say Jay Reed is 2.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say Q Jeff.
Q Jeff's a solid. He's a solid rotational guy for sure.
Frank Clark, that's 4.
You can stop because you're not gonna get anybody after that.
Cassius Marsh is cool. He's cool.
He's been on like 8 teams already. Drafted in
4.5,
2014.
Mike.
That is, Chris, that is not. I named 22 guys or whatever, 23. I've messed up some of those guys' names, but you guys get the point. Those are all the guys drafted the years prior to Ken coming back from Oakland to be the defensive coordinator.
Not working with much.
What am I supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to do with that? And it didn't get much better in 2018 and 2019, even when he wasn't. Now, I don't know what role he played in that, like how much say he had in some of the drafting. I don't imagine that it was much. But let's see, just for shits and giggles, right? Here are all the defensive players drafted by the Seahawks in 2018 and 2019. You ready, Chris?
Let's do it.
All right, 2018. Trey Flowers, Rasheem Green, Jacob Martin. 2019, LJ Collier, Ugo Amadi, Cody Barton, Shaquem Griffin, Marquise Blair, Ben Burke-Irvin, DeMarcus Christmas. Chris, what am I supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to do? Like
the only one. There's only 10. Yeah, that's tough. I would say Rasheem Green. He's finding his role. He is finding his role, which is that doesn't mean he's good, but he's definitely playing well.
He's a solid player. He was a 79th pick, solid player.
And then it gets quiet.
That's it. Jacob Martin is probably the best player that I named, but he don't play for the Seahawks no more.
Well, that's why I didn't mention him, because he's not even on the roster. They traded him. They traded him for Clowney.
Yeah, he was in the Clowney trade with Barkevious Mingo, who's still in the league, I believe. But the reason I'm naming these guys is that this is not like a Ken apology podcast. Just like the Chris Richard one we did, I have to go back and listen to it. That probably was an apologist podcast.
What were you thinking?
Yeah, I thought Pete was wrong there. Like currently, I'm just like, one reason why I think it matters is like if I give you, if I make 7 picks or whatever on defense in 2019 or whatever it was, and the best one is Ugo, what am I supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to do with that? Like in 2017, they drafted 4 DBs. Only Shaq panned out. Like
to another didn't even get to a contract with the Seahawks. They were like, "Yeah, we're not paying you."
Right, and it's just I think that's the step one when you evaluate what's really wrong with the Seahawks defense. And I think
paying fools, that's one step.
You think
pay him? I don't care.
I went through some. I'm not going to read them all because it was an ugly list. But I went through some of their free agent signings on defense since about 2013. It is ugly. The best one is basically Bradley McDougald.
That says a lot.
And they've made some decent trades. The Quandre trade was good. The Carlos Dunlap trade was good. But
to your point, they made those trades because they missed in drafts.
Bingo. Justin Coleman. Yeah. Justin Coleman trade was probably their best one.
Oh, he came in and lit things up. Nickelback was doing his. Come on, man.
And they gave up like a 7th to get him or something like that.
They didn't give up. They gave up nothing.
Yeah, the math on that ends up. I think they ended up giving up effectively Cassius Marsh. I have to go back and look at it. But the point is, their free agent signings ain't good. They don't draft well. And you're telling Ken, here, man, and Andre, because I just named all the DBs. Here, man, figure it out, guys. They're like, what the hell?
Hey, run cover 3.
Run cover 3 with Tedrick. Come on, dog. What are you talking about? No, we're gonna lose.
Have you seen the tape? I can't do that. It's tough. It doesn't work.
With that in mind, honestly, I could make an argument if I really wanted to. I wouldn't, but I could make one that's like, nah, man. Given what he was given personnel-wise, Ken should probably stay. Based on
who's gonna come in and fix it. That was to my point earlier.
Yeah, I think the personnel is the first thing you got to look at. And the to their credit, the 2020 draft, honestly, since then, since that 2019 draft, that was a disaster. The whole draft was pretty bad. You got DK in it, and then that was pretty bad.
That was it.
But the 2020 and 2021 drafts on defense are looking a little better. Jordan Brooks, Carroll Taylor, Alton Robinson, Trey Brown. Healthy. Like I like all of the guys I just named. I think they're some decent, solid players, and I think the superstar potential is DT, and I think everyone else can just be solid, which is like not great, but it's better than the names I just read. That I think that's what you really gotta start with when you're talking about what went wrong in Seattle and why fire Ken and what was Ken's fault and what.
Well, yeah, we don't know. That's the crazy part. It's not like you can ask Pete. Hey, Pete, what is Ken Norton's responsibilities? Does he have a lot to say here? And Pete would say, I'm not getting into that.
Yeah,
And that I get it. He doesn't want everybody to know, what goes on within the organization. There's some things he wants people to know and some things he doesn't. But when it comes down to breaking down why someone got let go, I feel maybe not. I think that would be important information moving forward, because now you can say, oh, this is what Ken Norton did. Ken Norton was responsible for drafting LJ Collier, Marquise Blair. He had a big say on that, but we don't know. We don't have the information. We're going off of what we're watching. We're going off what's been said. And that's basically trying to put the pieces of this puzzle together, but we can't do it. So not having information really, there's questions. Damn, did Ken really deserve to lose his job based on personnel and based on what he's been asked to do? Those are questions that only Ken Norton would be able to answer. And maybe we could reach out to Ken and see if he wants to come on the pod and we could talk to him about.
He's probably not going to throw Pete under the bus on that.
No, he's not going to throw it under the bus, but maybe we get an inside look on the defense and who has say.
I think that would be great. I think
wishful thinking.
The other thing is when you draft poorly, you have to make those trades. Like put it this way. They spent, and some of this is great, some of it's not, but relative to cost, they spent a first-round pick on Jamal Adams, a first-round pick on Jamal Adams, a third-round pick on Jamal Adams, a seventh-round pick and a lot more money on Carlos, a fifth-round pick and a lot more money on Quandre. Like, when you do things like that, yes, you get the veteran. And in some cases, I'm cool with getting the veteran when you're trying to win right now. But what that does is that not only did you give away those picks, you compromise depth. Like, who you could have taken in these drafts would probably be a nice little depth piece to slide in. Instead, at cornerback in particular, you're grabbing guys off the damn scrap heap before the year starts.
Sidney Jones.
Bless Austin. Come on up. Yeah. Sidney Jones, we ain't had you all camp, but pull up. You might start in a few weeks. John Reed, we might need you, bro. So come on. Like, you shouldn't have to, and that's no shade to those guys, but you shouldn't have to do that. That shouldn't be like, if you're Ken, like by week 18, the back seven by the end of the game was Josh Jones, Nigel Warrior, DJ Reed, and I can't even remember who was starting at left. Was Sidney back there? I honestly don't even remember. Like, their secondary, maybe it was Bless. They played Bless Austin against the Rams, John Reed against the Rams in that game. Like, at that point, what are we doing here? So I do think the personnel part is important. Like, I need to know who's in charge of that, because when you draft poorly, you have to make trades to make up for it, and then you lose depth. So when you do have a Trey Brown blow his knee out or whatever, you shouldn't have to go to Sidney, who played all right, but you get the point. So I do think you ask the bottom of the screen here for people on YouTube, like, oh, what's next? Man,
we don't know.
Talent. You need talent. I was talking to somebody today via text, somebody who knows the ins and outs of the defense pretty well. Is not a player. But I was like, am I tripping to say that it doesn't matter what scheme you guys are running, if you got guys who can't cover or guys who can't rush the passer? All they said was exactly, with an exclamation point. Like, yeah, who cares who's out there? Not who cares, it does matter. But it's like, you gotta get better personnel. There ain't no defensive coordinator out there routinely fielding top 10 defenses with scrubs or just rotational guys. They got stars. Look at all the best defenses. They have stars, star power out there. And I think that, Dan Quinn's probably a really good defensive coordinator, but it's probably not rocket science. Look at all the good players that Dallas has now too, though. Like, they drafted probably the best defensive player, a top 5 defensive player in football, and Micah Parsons. So now the defense is better. Not rocket science. They drafted Trevon Diggs 2020. He's in year 2 now, balling. Well, yeah, the defense is better, on top of having Gregory and DeMarcus Lawrence and some of the other guys. So I think that the personnel part is so huge when we talk about what's next and what Ken did or did not do. And that's before we even get into, Chris, they probably disagreed on we're probably right back in philosophical differences too.
Yeah, there's no telling what Ken might have had in mind. We were talking about it off wax. Pete could have said, hey, I want to do a lot more cover zero, and cover zero is basically we're blitzing the hell out of you and everybody's manned up. Ken's thinking, do you not see what I'm looking at? How can I adjust to that? You saw what happened when we played Minnesota. We weren't even doing it. We weren't even blitzing them, and they were lighting us up. And now you want us to go cover zero and covering these receivers. I don't know if I like that. And Pete's maybe disagreeing, stating that I think we can do it. I'm not saying this is true, but this is just an example of philosophical differences between these guys, if that is the case,
That
because
could be the case. Yeah.
it could be, but we don't know. With that being said, that goes back to talent, free agency. Seahawks got to be able to get some corners in. You want to bring back DJ Reed. He is someone that you got to find a way to pay him. And I did mention they didn't pay Shaq. They should have paid Shaq. They didn't. Couldn't the Seahawks have paid Shaq, Mike, if I'm not mistaken?
You can pay anybody you want in the NFL if
Okay.
you want them
Let
back.
me
I
back
really
up.
think that an agent told me that once at the combine. Say you can afford anybody you want if you want them better enough.
The
And that's
Seahawks
a
didn't
fact.
want. That
The
is
Saints
true.
are paying Taysom Hill like he owns the goddamn Saints. You know, and they don't even have any money. They never have any money. They pay everybody,
That is
including
true.
Taysom Hill. Like
This-
you can pay whoever you want if you want them bad enough. And nobody wants anybody in the world more than Sean Payton wants Taysom Hill. Like
The Seahawks. No, you're right. The Seahawks did not want to pay Shaquille that much money. I thought, was he well deserving of it? Probably not. Sure, he had a couple of blunders, mistakes, but the talent pool out there and what the Seahawks ended up getting, it didn't work out.
Did you hear the corners I just read to you? Yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
Having DJ Reed and Shaquille Griffin, I think, gives you a game, maybe 2 games. Maybe against that Washington football team, if Shaq is there, that play doesn't even happen. These are things that you have to look at and say, you know, I'm just pinpointing examples because that's the first thing that came to my mind, but that's the veteran cornerback in Shaquille Griffin that knows where to be, knows what could be coming, has been studying the film, has been studying the tape. Not saying that whoever was on coverage on that play, who was it, Mike?
Oh, what play are you talking about?
When he came across the middle for the touchdown, Washington football team.
Washington football team. Did they score? I think J.D. McKissick scored both of their touchdowns. Did they even go for one?
I guess that's no. I guess the only example would be the Chicago Bears, and that was just an incredible catch. One hand holding it out there. But these are little things that you just got to go out and pay him, man. Like Mike said, if you want him, you can pay him. Seahawks said, we're not going to pay you that money. He went and got paid, secured the bag. Unfortunately, his team stunk. But when you get him bread, it makes up maybe just a little bit. Just saying. But I do think this offseason is key in finding that talent that can come in and be a coverage guy that can fit well with DJ Reed. But the ultimate thing is you gotta pay DJ. And I'd be stunned if the Seahawks say we're gonna let him walk, which would be mind-boggling. I don't know what they have planned and who they might be looking at. The draft's coming up. Maybe there's a couple of corners that the Seahawks can get, but DJ Reed is someone that, you know, there's a top 3 list of things you need to get done. He is in that top 3 of we got to bring him back. You got to have someone solid on that outside corner, and hopefully you can build from that with this new defensive coordinator and the scheme that Pete wants to run.
And my thing on free agents, and I tell those people all the time too, I don't care who you pay and who you don't. Ain't my money. You know, I would prefer the guys who are good players and they're good interviews, but that's selfish on my part. Ultimately, it ain't my money. I don't care. They don't give me no cut. But I do think if you decide not to, you need to have a plan and a good plan. That's all. Just have a plan. Sometimes plans don't go through. Like I think trading Frank to then draft a pass rusher with your first round pick is not a bad plan, right? They added a first round pick in that deal. They ended up using it on LJ, which was bad, but the plan was not like terrible.
Yeah, you lose a defensive pass rush, you try and go and get one. Makes sense.
Yeah, and you get one relative to the cost too. Like Frank makes $20 million a year, so your LJ was probably making like 2 or whatever. Like I understood the math on that, and I wasn't mad at that. Getting LJ was the execution of the plan was bad. The plan was fine. Whereas cutting Sherm to then like plan on starting Dante Johnson and Byron Maxwell and then end up starting Trey Flowers in the following season, that was stupid. That was a terrible plan from the jump. And it got executed. The execution was even worse. So that's my thing on paying guys or not paying it, whether it's DJ Reed or Shaq or this year Quandre, whoever. You know, that's kind of my rule of thumb. Whether if you're not going to pay a guy, fine, ain't my money. Mike gets $0 when these guys get paid. So don't care. Chris gets $0. The show gets $0. We don't care. But you got to have a plan, right? You have to. But I do think, and I noted this Because somebody, like I said, Adam and Bob at the Seattle Times are kind of all over this, and even Adam kind of, mentioned that Pete's kind of going to pivot from the philosophy and wants to be, quote, more attack-minded, which is probably a hint at, attack-minded. Don't know what that means. Not going to ask, but that would make sense, though, that's kind of our first sign at philosophical differences. You can probably imply that if that's what Pete wanted and he got rid of Ken, it may not be what Ken had wanted. Maybe Ken didn't want to attack. Maybe Ken didn't want to blitz more. Maybe he didn't want to play more man. Whatever attack means. Attack usually means those things. You blitz, you play man, you get in people's face, you bring the fight to the offense. It's usually what that means in football. Maybe Ken didn't want to do those things. Or maybe he did. And he was like, dude, we don't have guys who can attack. How about you get me some attack guys and we could be attack-minded all the hell you want. I don't know if that was Ken's thinking, but I mean, we got to read between the lines of some of this stuff. They're not just going to tell us. Last year was different with the philosophical differences quote. They told us. They ain't going to tell us again, so we got to read between the lines. But that quote right there, is something that I've kind of heard in the past, but now it's like, now seeing Adam put that out there, it's like, oh, okay, there's probably something to that. It's like, all right, how can you have an attack mindset with guys who ain't built like that? How can you have an attack mindset when you're sitting back in the split safety looks and Jamal is 20 yards from the line of scrimmage off the line when he's better close to the line? He's supposed to be attacking. I think how they used him was okay because he can come downhill a little bit more from depth the way he did, but like the way he was used was trash this year. I thought, like, in totality, especially hearing Pete explain why he wasn't rushing as much. We'll get into that when we get into the Q&A part of the show. But and I bring all that up to say, if you're going to have philosophical differences, again, with your coordinator, another side of the ball, philosophical differences, you're not going to really change too much of the core philosophy. Like maybe they'll go to some split safety stuff because that's kind of what you have to do now. Everybody's doing it. Ain't nobody out here running a good defense that's just covered 3 anymore. You can't do that. Offenses are too smart. They run too many different formations. They figured out how to beat that stuff. They did. You can't do that. So Pete's probably going to change there, but the core philosophies won't change. The guy running the personnel won't change. You're having philosophical differences again. Well, damn, man. Chris, we're going to be right back here in a year or two.
Like Pete said, I'm in good shape, guys.
Yeah, he's in good shape. Everybody else is like, hey, man, are you saying we're not philosophically aligned with you, even if you might be wrong? We get canned? Man, hold up. What's going on with that? And I think that's where the coordinator stuff is so difficult to digest and explain and assess. People ask us when we talk, I think we got some questions about that. Just who should they hire? Who should they look at? Does it matter? We're right back here again. Just like we said with Shane last year, Shane Waldron. Does it matter? What's Shane going to do that Darrell Bevel ain't think of, that Brian Schottenheimer ain't think of? Not much. Probably not much. Not to say those guys are not different minds, but you can only change but so much. In football, in particular, that you got to start at the top when you're looking at stuff. I was telling somebody, we can get to the questions, but I was telling somebody today, I was like, in that meeting with Jody and Pete and John or whoever met, I think that the main thing that was going to change the Seahawks, if you weren't going to fire anybody, like we're going to keep me, like Pete's like, I'm going to stay, John's going to stay, Jody, we got this. Let's figure this out. Even if we're going to keep Russ. I was telling somebody today, I was like, the only thing that would probably really be impactful out of that meeting is if Jody was like, Pete, that's fine. But you are wearing a lot of hats. You're damn near our secondaries coach. You're damn near our defensive coordinator. You're damn near our head coach. And then you're also our GM. Take one of these hats off, my guy. Take one. It doesn't really matter which one. Just take one of them off, and maybe we can go in a different direction. Personally, I would prefer this is just me, not Jody. But I would probably prefer the personnel hat. But either way, that's just a lot of hats that have caused a lot of issues over time. It's like if you're not going to take off any of those hats, and nobody else is really going to take off any other hats of significance other than getting rid of Ken, what's really supposed to change? What's really going to change? Chris, what the defense was here. I'm going to read you some.
I think it was 17th, right? EPA.
Yeah, I'm going to read. Yeah, it was not good in terms of EPA per play. But I'm going to read you the DVOA numbers. That's Football Outsiders metric that's adjusted for opponent. So that means if you smoke the Lions, it adjusts for that because it's defense adjusted value over average is what DVOA stands for. So like, it basically is relative, which is good. I like those type of metrics because you do have to account for smoking the Jaguars and Lions and Texans versus playing close games with Washington, New Orleans, and Minnesota.
Chicago.
Yeah, losing to Chicago. Like those are important things to measure because that's basically the Seahawks season. They smoked some really bad teams and then beat some teams close that weren't actually that good. Cardinals. But I'm gonna read. This is their DVOA numbers under Ken. Just total defensive rating. 13th, or excuse me, in 2018, his first year, they were 17th. 2019, they were 21st. 2020, they were 16th. 2021, they were 21st, right? So never really great, about average to below average every year under Ken. Chris, I'm going to ask you this. Assuming they have like a normal offseason, like a normal Seahawk offseason, like they just don't go crazy in free agency.
Facts.
They have a good draft. They don't have a 2012 or a 2011 or 10 draft. They have like a
2020 or 2019.
No, 2019 was bad.
I mean 2020 then. 2020.
I'm use like a draft like a 2015. 2015 they got Tyler Lockett,
Okay.
stud, Frank Clark, stud, scrubs, right? So let's say they have a draft like that, which is realistic. That's usually
That's
how
why I said 2020 was good. Jordan Brooks, good. Daryl Taylor, good.
I think Daryl Taylor, the 2020 draft, I think has potential to be like excellent.
Okay, but back to your point, 2015 draft class.
Maybe
Go
not
ahead.
excellent, but like really good. But let's say they have one of those. So they have a regular free agent period where they bring back most of their guys, which is what they do. Their biggest free agent signing in the past few years is giving Ed Dixon 3-year deal, or they gave Jaron Reed some money. Like they don't pay.
Greg Olsen.
Yeah, Greg Olsen got a lot of money. So Ben Samuel got a lot of money one of those years, I think, or Bruce Irvin. So let's assume that they have a Seahawky free agency, a Seahawky draft, like a 2015 type of draft, maybe. They have one of those. Where do you think? What's the highest you think they could realistically finish with a new defensive coordinator in 2020 or 2022 in DVOA? Like, where do you think they could get to with a new defensive coordinator and a typical Seahawk offseason?
17th.
So an average defense.
Yes.
Defense can probably be average.
That's the best. The worst, 23rd, 24th.
So average to below average again.
Back to square one.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too.
But
I think it depends on who they bring back and who they don't. I think
that's the biggest thing, and that's when you talk about personnel, who they bring back and who they go out and get. That's why that top 3 list, DJ Reed's got to be somewhere in there. You can't just we'll figure it out. Terrible already.
I do like that in a perfect world, a starting secondary and base defense that has Carlos Dunlap, Daryl Taylor, Bobby Wagner, Jordan Brooks, Trey Brown, DJ Reed, Quandre, whose foot is broke, but he should be fine by.
That sounds good on paper. I hear that and I'm like, I'm thumbs up. Hello.
That's not actually that bad. And then Puna, Brian Monet, like that as actually like I just named a base defense. I guess I think I need a nickel in that.
Well, it ain't Hugo.
Yeah, I need a new nickel in that.
Gotta figure that out.
Or I add a Sam linebacker in that. So maybe maybe Daryl's my Sam, and then I add, I bring Rasheem back or something like that. Like that defense is not like saving the world, but it's probably fine. Like I think that could probably get up to about 12th in DVOA, depending. I have to look at their schedule again, but my point is that you're only gonna get so much better if you don't have a 2012 type of draft, a 2011 type of draft, a 2010 type of draft, or you find the next Cliff Averill or Michael Bennett in free agency. You can't just keep doing the same thing, make a tweak here or there, start attack mindset in it, and that's just not gonna get it done. I really think that this is one of those. I don't know. It just seems like more of a cosmetic change than anything else. It seems like, oh dang, my car won't start every week. Like dang, it'd be messing up. I can't always get to work, so I just paint the car. Well, Mike, you need to fix the engine, or else it's not going to get you to work. Just because you change your car from blue to red, that just means it looks different. It's still the same car. That doesn't work. Like that's kind of where the Seahawks are. Pete just painting the car different colors. Like that's not gonna get you to work.
Super Bowl.
Or in this case, work would be, in my analogy, a Super Bowl. You know, that's kind of, to sum up what we've been talking about. That's kind of where I'm at with this. Like, should Ken have gone? I don't know. We don't know, but I think we can both confidently say that unless more things change than just Ken, and then Andre Curtis too. Like that was a. I don't want to act like he didn't lose his job too, but unless more things change than that, we're gonna be right back here. What day is it? I'm looking at my watch that I don't
January
have.
18th.
The 18th. We're gonna be right back here in 2024 or wherever. Probably 2023 because somebody getting fired if they don't win the Super Bowl next year. Let's be really honest.
I don't, unless they seriously hit gold and draft and they bring in, they re-sign, they figure out a way to move money around for Bobby. They pay DJ, pay Quandre.
And then pay more. You need to pay more guys though. Like that's the other thing. You need to bring in more pass rushers. You need to bring in more corners. You know, I think, but I just think that there's so much that needs to change beyond. Like discussing the merits of Ken getting fired or not is like fun. Like that's cool. We did that. All right. That took 10, 20 minutes or whatever. The what's next part is so important. And there's so many things that need to change beyond just, all right, you got a new guy wearing the headset. My boy, y'all ain't rushed the passer since Nam. That is a problem. Y'all ain't got turnover. Like, they were good in turnover 2020, but like 2021, y'all couldn't get an interception to save your life unless Quandre was reading quarterbacks. Like, that's not good. They were like good situationally on defense this year. They were really weird defense. They were like good on third down, fourth down, in the red zone, on the goal line. They were great. They were pretty great in all those areas. Everywhere else, bad, pretty much, except the run defense. The run defense was good. And it's just like they have variations of those same problems pretty much every year. It's just like, stop. Eventually, you got to stop painting the car. Get in the car, fix the engine. You know, do something. Yeah, change the brakes. I don't know. This is my analogy. I'm just making it up. But like, you got to do more. The what's next here has to be more than just changing out a name, or else Pete's next defensive coordinator is going to be another bald black guy, and it's not. You love him, a bald black guy as a coordinator. He do. I swear he do. He loves all bald guys, but you're gonna have another bald black guy as a coordinator. Ain't nothing gonna change. Who's the new guy that is supposed to be the coordinator? What they're talking about? Clint Hurt do it?
Yep.
Is Clint bald?
He's bald.
He's sure to help. There it is. There it is.
Well, let's get
black
to
guy.
it. We
Bald black guy. Dude, what's this other guy? This Ed Donatel dude that worked for the Broncos? Is he bald? Hold on. Let me see. Dog, he's bald. Yep. Oh man.
Hell, even the Rams secondary coach, the Frenchman, bald.
Yeah. Oh, he's from the UK?
From the other side.
Oh, okay. But yeah, Pete's gonna hire some bald brothers, and then we're gonna be right back here. Unless major things change, or like you said, Chris, they strike gold in the draft. Because it's the same thing we talk about with offense. How I'd be like, if you got 5 fat dudes who can block, you run whatever the hell you want.
Man,
same thing. When you got studs on defense, you can run cover 3 and just line up and beat the other team all day, or cover 2 or whatever. When you don't have that, you have to get all creative and basically pray for depth and health, and that's just not how it works. So like they have a lot more work to do than this.
That is true.
We got a lot of work. Things change going forward, but they need, like, it has to be a major change, not just get rid of 2 guys.
No, I hear you on that. We got some work to get done here with some Twitter questions. We got quite a few, so we want to thank you guys for. We didn't have a plan on when we were going to record. I'll just throw that out there. So the fact that Mike was able to just drop it around mid-afternoon and people were like, oh yeah, we got questions. We appreciate that. So Mike, you ready to get this rolling?
I am. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Does Norton being let go increase the chance of Bobby Wagner not being back next season?
That's a good question. No, I think I'm gonna trust Pete's word on that. I'm gonna take him at face value, and Bobby's too. They both expressed some optimism about him being around, and I don't think you do that unless you're pretty confident both ways. Like even Pete was like, I don't even know why we would consider. I don't even know why we consider not having Bobby next year. And even Bobby was like, I think I'll be all right. Like if Bobby wasn't sure, he would have worded that differently. I'm not sure how, but he's a pretty meticulous guy in that way. One thing that's interesting though is, because coaches like their guys, they do, like Ken Norton's Bobby's guy and vice versa. I do wonder how they were viewing that, like they being Pete and Ken, like were they on the same page there? That's an interesting one that I don't have an answer for. I haven't heard anything or asked anybody, but that would be an interesting one. Like, did they see eye to eye on, where Bobby was in his career, what he was good at, what he needed to work on, and how that went? Because I wondered that about like KJ too. It's like Ken's gonna ride for his guys. Those are his guys, and they were performing. And it's like, okay, how did Pete see it? Not to say that there was any disagreement there, but who knows? That's one thing I think about. But no, I don't think Ken necessarily being gone impacts that necessarily. It could, but like I don't think there's enough autonomy on the part of a new guy to come in here and be like, we got to get 54 out of here. Like, think about that. Think of the balls you got to have. You walk into the Seahawks building, you the new dude. You're like, hey, I'm looking at this roster, guys. 54 is not it. Excuse me? Where's that contract? Why we throw you out of here like Phil throwing out Jazzy Jeff in the Fresh Prince? We get out of here. But I do think that coordinators can have similar influence, but not to that magnitude. Like how Shane Waldron probably really advocated for Gerald Everett. Like, that's fine. Something like that. It's 1-year deal. It was like $6 million. That type of stuff. Sure, for sure. You walk in and be like, we got to trade or cut Bobby. I just don't think a new guy can have that type of sway.
This one, assuming the new defensive coordinator has some control over scheme, how would you like to see Jamal Adams being used, and how can the Seahawks get the best out of him? We kind of touched on that before, but go ahead and reiterate it, Mike.
No, I think this is really, really, really important, because the only way to justify, I'm not really sure where I stand on like whether the Jamal trade was good or whatever. I don't necessarily care, but I do think if you're going to justify it, you had to put Jamal in the position to rush the passer. You had to. If you do not, that definitely cannot justify. Then it becomes bad. Like, that makes it bad. Like 2020, Jamal came in here last year with no preseason, bad elbow, dislocated shoulder, broken fingers, was their best pass rusher, made the Pro Bowl in the new scheme. Come on, like he's a baller. But where he was most effective was near the ball and near the line of scrimmage and getting after the quarterback. In 2021, let Pete Carroll tell it. He basically was like, look, dude, every time we put 33 near the line of scrimmage, they adjusted. We couldn't make it happen. So it's like, okay, after one freaking year, you let every team scheme you out of using Jamal as a pass rusher? That sounds like coaching incompetence to me. So I do think that has to change immediately. Like, I just don't think that you can justify that transaction just to have him what he was doing. He was doing a lot in the defense. Like, we had Sam Gold on, I think midway through the year, he broke it down. And I've talked to some other people who know the defense really well about it. Like, Jamal was doing a lot. He was. At the same time, though, to justify the transaction and the contract, you got to have him get into the quarterback. You can't just concede defeat in that way to be like, well, hey, man, we tried to put him in the line of scrimmage, but they blocked him. Excuse me? No. You can say that about like blitzing Bobby or Jordan or Ugo or Quandre or something like that, or some of your other guys. You cannot say that about a guy you gave up 2 first-round picks and gave $17.5 million per year to. You need to find a way, put your freaking heads together, and get him near the quarterback. You just have to do it. You have to. Otherwise, it doesn't. Why do that deal to allocate those resources for that player? I just don't think that's a good use of resources if you're just going to have him be, quote unquote, like traditional strong safety. You got to use him differently because he is different. He's built different. And I think to basically concede defeat after 1 year, that was it. Teams got one offseason to scout how you guys were using Jamal, figured the whole thing out, and relegated him to like the split safety stuff. I don't think that's getting out coached to me. They got out coached. The new coordinator and the new passing game coordinator, or whatever, they need to that should be, damn, Bobby, figure that part out fast, because that's good. If he's an elite pass rusher like he was in 2020, the defense can be close to elite. But if not, then no, they'll be like you said, Chris, like 17th. Like I said, maybe max out at 12th.
As a pure football decision, not talking the Hall of Fame retired aspect into account, is Bobby a better option than what the 17 million can get you to improve the team?
The 17 million that person's referencing, I think, is if you were to cut or trade Bobby, you save about 16 and some change. He's a $20 million cap hit, but the rest of that is paid out as a bonus already, just to clear up some of the math on that. As a football decision, I think so, and here's why. I think just from a purely football standpoint, I don't trust them to use that money wisely otherwise. You know what I mean? Like, if I give, let's see, the Seahawks have about 50 mil to spend, 51. If I give them, what's 51 plus 16, Chris? Come on, you got it.
61, 67?
67. If I give you 67 million and I say, hey, you guys need a middle linebacker, you need pass rushers, corners, free safety, and O-line. Do I trust this regime to bring me back talent? Hell to the no. Like, hold on. Do I have this? Let me pull my phone up here. Because looking at this, Chris, do you remember the 2020 offseason? Here's how they spent, I think, $52 million. Let me see if I got it here in my notes. Here it is. In the 2020 offseason, right? So this is the year they signed Greg Olsen, right? So heading into 2020 season.
Oh,
they had about $52 million in 2020 caps, like, spending, right? So they could sign guys to deals, but like here's how the cap hits added up to the 52 million that they used, right? That offseason. 9.3 on Jaron Reed, 6.9 on G-Reg, 5.9 on Bruce, 3.5 on BJ Finney, 3.5 on Brandon Shell, 3.4 on Quentin Dunbar, that was via trade, 3.3 on Jacob Hollister, 3 mil on Benson Mayoa, 3 mil on Carlos, 2.5 on Mike Ayupati, 2.2 on Cedric Abui, 2.1 on Brandon Jackson, 2.1 on Demo, and then another basically $1 mil on Geno Smith. That all that right there, $50 million. They signed like one impactful new guy.
B Shell.
Yeah, B Shell. That was it. Brandon Finney, BJ Finney never even played.
Sent him back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, no, they sent him to Cincy in the Dunlap. Okay. But the point is, 50 million can dry up with the wrong. It could dry up really quick, and you don't get impactful players with the wrong front office. So I think that from a football standpoint, you have to consider who would be spending the money you save on Bobby. Like, that's a lot of players that they have to try to fill voids for. The extra 16 mil, I don't trust. I expect that 16 mil would just be used to overpay somebody that's not worth it, that probably doesn't even fill a need. That's my lack of faith in the front office in that way, because they kind of have 52 million right now, a very similar amount. And the last time they had that much, that's what they got back. A bunch of guys who didn't have much impact and who aren't even on the team no more. So from a football standpoint, yes, I think it's probably better to just have Bobby.
Are Carlos Dunlap and Darrell Taylor good enough to be starting defensive ends, or did the Seahawks need to bring in another premium pass rusher? Love Taylor's potential, and Dunlap was great when he didn't have to drop into coverage anymore.
That's another good question. I think so. I think that if you were to say bring back Rasheem, maybe, who's not like premier, he wouldn't fall into that category. But if you were like, all right, we draft a guy, we got Rasheem, we got DT, we got Alton Robinson, we got Carlos Dunlap, I'm okay with that. You know, maybe at that point you take some flyers on some other guys, you know. But I'm okay with that, because I think Darrell's got some superstar potential in him. I think he's nasty. And I think Alton, if he gets more in the rotation and isn't asked to be a Sam linebacker and drop into coverage, I think he's got some potential. These guys are young too. Like, I think Rasheem Green turns 25 this spring. DT's like 24. I don't know how old Alton is, but he's in the same draft as Darrell, so he can't be that old. And then obviously Carlos on the older side, but I think having a vet in there,
that's good.
Is nice to balance that out with some of the other pieces that they have. So yeah, no, I think that's okay. I don't think the pass rush necessarily needs an overhaul if you change the scheme back to kind of where they were before.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
This whole it goes back to what somebody told me in free agency last year. They said, Mike, actually they called me Michael-Shawn. That's how you knew it was real. They were like, hey, Michael-Shawn, if we lose KJ Wright, that's like losing two people. And you see how that manifested itself in the 2021 season, you saw guys doing things that KJ was doing last year, not as well. You saw Benson guarding Najee Harris on the goal line in Pittsburgh. That's not something, not to say like, KJ's like, I don't know, he could probably guard Najee on the goal line. But like, the point is, Benson's not. And that was unfair to Benson to have him do that. And I think the staff even admitted that later. You see Carlos Dunlap out here trying to jam slot receivers because he's the strong side backer on that particular front and setup. No, it's not his thing. I think that, man, the way the scheme was set up really hurt the pass rushers. And if they just got to be pass rushers again, I think they would be a lot better. I think the only guy who's really equipped to do the whole Sam thing is Darrell Taylor.
I was going to say, that was my next point.
Goddamn athletic, man.
Yeah, he looks like he can do it. He just needs a little bit more guidance on how to be there and what to look for. But from what I saw watching the tape, watching the games, he has the speed, the quickness. He just needs to be coached up a little bit. And maybe, for example, having a KJ Wright showing him the ropes, who knows how elite this kid would be. But Dunlap, he was brought up in that. I do think, even though I think it'll be his 13th year next season, is that right?
Something like that, yeah.
I do still think he is definitely someone that needs to be starting with the Seahawks defense, because when he's out there pass rushing, he's dominant.
He gets to the quarterback.
He's also 6'8", and he puts his hands up. I think he led the team in passes batted, and he
might have led the league in passes batted.
And the crazy part is, he really wasn't doing that the first half of the season. He mentioned it in the post game 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, talking about, I didn't get my opportunity that I wanted, but basically I talked to those guys, Pete, and I told them, this is kind of what I want to do. This is kind of what I'm seeing. Can we get back to that? And we saw that. He got back to that. He was rushing the passer. He was causing havoc in the backfield. And what do you know? Carlos Dunlap rushing, good things come out of that. Darrell Taylor, he had a good season. Can he get better in certain areas? Absolutely. But I do think those two guys are definitely going to be premium pass rushers for the 2022 season. And I'm hoping they don't put them in coverage as much. Whereas I could see Darrell Taylor doing it. He just has to get better. I don't want to see Carlos doing it at all, to be honest. Unless they're going to send another linebacker or safety or corner, I don't really want to see Carlos dropping back, because that's not something that he is great at. He is great at getting after the quarterback, and we saw that.
That's not why he's been in the league 13 years, is because he can, drop and be covering slot receivers.
Exactly.
That's not it. To get the stat 100% correct, Carlos was third in the league in passes batted at the line of scrimmage. He tied with TJ Watt. They both had 6. Cam Hayward of Pittsburgh had 8. Emmanuel Agba of Miami had 11, which is absurd. But that shows you, yes, Carlos can impact games. He won them a game batting a ball.
Yeah.
At the line of scrimmage against the Niners, I believe. Because whoever Jimmy was throwing to was open.
Oh, yeah, on the whip route.
Yeah, he was going to catch it.
It was that whip route out, and he was wide open.
And then Shanahan said they were going to go for 2, and they were probably going to get it, and that would have been the game over.
Game.
Yeah, I think those guys have the talent. Maybe you add some rotational pieces, but I don't think you need to, I think people want them to, pay for, Chandler Jones or something. I don't think you necessarily need to. You can if you want. I don't think you need to. I think you have those pieces there.
Who do you think was responsible for early season coverage bust, miscommunication among DBs?
Coverage busts are hard to. I'd have to know the call. I have to know what a guy was thinking on a particular play. But I do think that, I think early on, because they didn't have a lot of busts later in the year. I think they had one major one against the Rams on one of those long third downs that I think was Ugo's fault. But I think earlier in the year, it was just really clear that guys were not comfortable with the scheme and what they were being asked to do. And Trey Flowers made that very clear after the Vikings game. He made it very clear one of two things was true. Either he didn't know the scheme or trust his role in it. Right? That was it. And that's why they shipped him out of town. And I think he's is in the Bengals rotation or whatever. So good for him, finding work and still being able to play in the division around this weekend. But I think that busts were a problem last year more than anything, and I think that was a communication thing, not having preseason, guys getting hurt, stuff like that, incorporating Jamal, who's such an aggressive player. This year, I don't think that was as much of the problem. I just think it just didn't seem like they knew who they wanted to be coverage-wise. Even DJ Reed talked about it. He was like, yeah, we got more aggressive, in the second and later in the year. That's why we were playing so much better, and that stuck out to me. And then I think that's when I asked somebody about hey, wait, is that who wants to be more aggressive? That a Pete thing than a Norton thing? And it sounds like now we got the answer. But I think that was just deciding between, all right, we're going to be bend don't break, we're going to be aggressive, what are we going to do? I think deciding between that philosophy was a bit more impactful than just like who had a lot of busts. I don't think they had a lot of busts in the secondary this year, which is why I was kind of surprised to see Andre go. I thought he had guys doing all right relative to who he was putting out there, John Reeds and Les Austins and stuff like that. Like, I don't think they had a lot of busts. I think they just didn't have a lot of talent down the stretch.
I think it comes also down to execution, just the plays called, but not so much a bust, but miscommunication, kind of what you hinted at. And that's all I'll really add there. But they got to figure something out, or else it's going to be the same story as throughout the regular season.
You just got to find out who they want to be. You know, if they're going to be this in attack mode, get attacking personnel, get a coordinator who agrees, and then execute it. I don't think they had all of those things last year. For whatever they're missing, we can debate it, but I just don't think they had all of those elements to make that work.
How much could another defensive coordinator and different assistants get a defense up to speed sooner into a season without two-a-days or full speed contact practices throughout training camp?
I think if they get the full off-season work, like, remember last year they didn't go to OTAs, I think because of COVID, I think it was. But if they get that on-field work, don't have to rely on Zoom, get the OTAs, the veterans show up, I think they'll be okay. The tricky thing I think you'd have to worry about a little bit is if they were to not have Bobby, that would be a problem. You lose your captain. And then if they sign Quandre, but he's not ready to go and be on the field, because he is kind of like their secondary captain. So not having him in the back end could be an issue. But I think getting up to speed won't be the problem. I think you just need the reps. I think that's where this might be the year where the guys play in the preseason. Like, for example, if they, get a new coordinator, it's like, look, we got to have you out there. We got to get some of these live reps. Maybe like Bobby still doesn't play, but maybe he plays like a drive or two just to get the feel. Like, just be out there, make the checks, let these guys hear you call it, see how the offense reacts. That's not our offense, stuff like that. Maybe joint practices would be the time to do that. Then if you don't want to play Bobby or Quandre or some of your veteran guys, Carlos, but I do think you just need the reps. I don't think that being new stinks, kind of, but ultimately you just need the reps. And if you got the veterans out there, you can get guys up to speed. Again, I don't think they had a ton of busts this year. That was a problem in 2020. I don't think that was much of a problem in 2021.
If the Hawks' new defensive coordinator is more secondary focused, does that affect how Jamal Adams is used?
I'm not sure. I don't think it necessarily the new defensive coordinator's background matters. I think this Donatel guy might be a secondary guy, which is probably why someone asked that. Let me see. What's his background? I think he might have been like DBs or something like that for Vic Fangio somewhere else or something like that. Yeah, he was a DB coach. Oh, he's been a DB coach forever. Yeah. So, like a guy like him, if he's the DB coach, that probably means using Jamal slightly differently, but I don't think the background matters as much as, man, is that dude an evil genius? You got to be an evil genius to figure this out, man. You got to use because the frustrating thing about how they're using Jamal is I do think there's examples around the league of how to go about deploying a dude with a unique skill set like that.
Buda Baker,
Honey Badger, yeah. Buda Baker, Derwin James, like there are guys out there. You like, look, how did they use him? Some of those guys a little different. I think Buda and Jamal are somewhat similar.
Somewhat similar, yeah.
Yeah. Honey Badger, not so much. He can really sticky cover. But Derwin, is very similar to Jamal in that regard. And when you have those type of players, even Jalen Ramsey to some extent, like the way he's used, like near the line of scrimmage, because he's so physical in the run game, that's very similar to Jamal, I think. Not as much as the coverage part, obviously. I just think there's so many examples out there that you can use, and I don't think the person's background has to be in DB play for them to figure that part out. Because when you're the coordinator, you have to know every part anyway. You have to be able to know the linebackers. You have to be able to coordinate the run game. You have to be able to work with the guys on the back end. I just think it's imperative for them to change how they use Jamal, at least adjust or add to maybe not change, add to how they use Jamal whether that guy's background is special teams. You just have to do it. You cannot spend that level of resources on that dude and not have him get after quarterbacks. It's just ridiculous. So to answer the question, I don't think the background has to matter. You just got to be willing to try something, be an evil genius, and find out a way to get Jamal Adams to the goddamn quarterback.
Can the new defensive coordinator stop having D linemen drop in the coverage? Can they stop having cornerbacks give wide receivers so much space?
On the D line dropping in the coverage, that's gonna happen. But like Chris hinted to earlier, I think what the problem was, I don't think they were doing it enough with blitzers filling in. Like I really think a good example is I think it was the Bucks game in the wild card round of the playoffs. The Bucks dropped like Vita Vea and maybe someone else. I forget who. Maybe Barrett.
Jason Pierre-Paul, maybe
that dude who played for UW, Joe something.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. I forget his name.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe something. I forget his name. It doesn't matter. I'm wearing a Coug hat while we do this show. I could care less about a Husky's name, to be honest. But they dropped those two or whatever, and they brought like both their safeties. I think it was like Winfield and the other safety. Can't remember. Mike Edwards, maybe, I think. But maybe this was the Niner game. Either way, what happened was they dropped their fat dudes, rushed their skinny dudes, and got to the quarterback. And that's what you need to do. Like, if you're going to drop Carlos here and there, and you're going to drop Puna Ford, okay, cool. Send Quandre, send Jamal, or send, they used to blitz Trey Flowers. He was a good blitzer. He had a couple sacks.
Yeah, two.
Yeah, blitzed Shaquille Griffin in a playoff game.
Him and Shaquem got a sack. First time in history.
Right. So, I mean, you can... Shaquille had a couple sacks. Shaquille had a sack his rookie year too on Dak, I want to say as well. So like you can, I'm all right with dropping the fat dudes because it's a change up. The center is at the line of scrimmage. He's like, all right, he's coming. You see him communicating with the quarterback, and then next thing you know, Vita's gone, and Jamal comes. That's fine. I just think that you have to do it that way and not just like they were doing against Pittsburgh, dropping 8, dropping 9. I don't necessarily rock with that. I think because you have to simulate the pressure elsewhere if you're going to drop your big dudes into coverage. But I still think it should be few and far between, man. Like, that's not what they get paid to do, bro. Puna's not in coverage. That's not his bag, bro. Stop asking him to do that. And I do think that's something when they evaluate. I don't necessarily can guarantee that it'll stop happening as often, but I would hope that it looks different. Like in this new attack mindset, that if they are blitzing more, that you will see some guys dropping, but it won't just be like, let's just drop 8 dudes and one of them's Puna. All right, we're still only dropping 7, but one of them's Puna, one of them's Rasheem Green, but we're blitzing Quandre and Jamal, right? Like that. I think you're still getting a 4-man rush. I think the new coordinator is more likely to do stuff like that because that fits the attacking mode thing without we're still finding new ways to like drop guys and like disguise your coverages and stuff.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And then the second part was regarding the DBs playing so far off the receiver. I don't have the answers to it, but I would guess that's maybe a personnel, players and coaches, something they got to figure out because there are certain situations where I watch DJ Reed. He's doing something different than Sidney Jones. While they're in the same scheme, DJ Reed is comfortable with doing this. He might be playing up more as opposed to Sidney Jones is giving 8 yards off. That could be communication with coaches. That could be DJ Reed knowing that I can lock this guy up. I'm not worried about it. I'm not sure the conversations that are had on the sideline between coaches and players in that regard, but I think that comes down to situational.
Well,
Maybe Pete, go ahead.
Well, I think some of it is like depending on what the coverage is. One of them's the cloud corner, so they can afford to
be in the flat. Yep.
Yeah, whereas the other guy may be playing something like if they're in cover 6 or something like that.
Yeah, you'll have one high and one low. Yep.
They might be playing cover 4 to one side, cover 2 to the other side, and if one guy's a cover 2 side, then he can afford to press his guy maybe to the boundary or whatever, or however it's aligned, depending on who the receiver is. Whereas the other guy has to bail because he has that deep fourth, on his side of it. So it depends. I do think that. It's a lot of how guys want to play, who the receiver is, the down and distance. I don't think
a lot of factors.
Yeah, I don't think the Seahawks are unique in that way. I asked the people at Zebra Technologies who track that stuff. They couldn't tell me because I don't think I subscribe to them or whatever, which is fine. But I don't think the Seahawks are that unique in that like their guys are playing off at the line of scrimmage at a different rate than everyone else. I think it's frustrating because when the third down defense was bad, and you're like, guys, it's 3rd and 8. Why 15 yards off? Like I do get those things, but if you notice, the third down defense got a lot better, right? So I do think that it wasn't as much as the scheme was bad. They needed the scheme was a little off, but I think they did tighten their coverage a little bit, specifically on third down. And you stop seeing that being much of a complaint. We stopped getting questions about Mike. Chris? Why are we 10 yards off? We stopped getting that after about week 4 because they stopped doing it and they fixed their third down defense. So I think that's one of those things. Again, in the attacking mode, you probably will see more aggression, more pressing, stuff like that if they have the personnel to do it. I think DJ Reed and Trey Brown can cover their asses off, hands in people's faces, getting right up on guys and covering. What if they don't? What if Trey Brown's recovery takes a little longer? What DJ Reed signs elsewhere? Maybe they will have to have more of a go back to a softer scheme. Who knows? But I think in a perfect world, you bring back DJ Reed and Trey Brown, you can be a little closer to guys on the line of scrimmage.
Why was the midseason correction for defense needed twice? And how do the Seahawks avoid this for this upcoming season?
Okay, I do want to be clear about this, and I think other people have made this point. They didn't suck on defense for an entire half of a season this year. They were bad for like 3 weeks. Honestly, like 2 weeks. They were fine against the Colts. And they stunk against the Titans. And they stunk against the Vikings. And they were fine, I thought, against the Niners. They were a little better. They had a hiccup against the Rams, which makes sense a little bit, but still kind of inexcusable at the same time. So that's like 2.5 weeks of bad, and they were fine. They were fine against Pittsburgh after that. They gave up, 13 points to the Saints, 7 to the Jaguars after that. Held Aaron Rodgers to, 3 through 3.5 quarters or whatever in Green Bay. Washington only scored however many points.
17.
Yeah, not much. So I think the defense figured it out much faster, whereas they stunk through about 9 weeks, in 2020. That's way different. This time it was only like the first couple weeks. Got Trey Flowers about the paint, got Trey Brown in there, and we're fine. I don't think it was like last year where they were telling us, we had to basically do like a kumbaya in week 10 and get it together. No, they didn't have to do that this year. So I do think we got to repaint that narrative in that regard. Like they didn't just stink for 2 halves in back-to-back years. They did have a slow start in both years, but I think it's different. They're different slow starts. In one respect, they stunk till like November, and the other one, they were fine by like October. And I do think that's important to know.
Can 12 Seahawk fans really expect Pete to hire someone who would push back or not run his defense? Would Pete
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You're not. Who are you going? You gonna hire somebody to not listen to you? Get the hell out of here. Like, even if I disagree with how Pete get down a little bit, I'm not stupid. I'm still a human. If I ran the company, the last thing you're going to do is get hired to not listen to me. Right? That's just, for real, that's just, even if I do think there's a little bit of flaw in the execution of that, we're all still humans at the end of the day. If it was our name on the marquee, which I guess his name isn't Seahawk, but you guys get what I'm saying. He's the head coach. Like, at the end of the day, if I'm running the show and I hire you to work for me, you come in here not listening, or you're all discontent or whatever, insubordinate, I'm gonna get you up out of here. Like, there does have to be a you listen to me type of thing at play here. And you know what? That's the burden. That's why I'm probably so critical of Pete more than anybody else. I'm probably the most critical person on the beat of Pete now that Joe Fan's, doing his Vegas thing. Because he is the guy at the top. You do run the special teams and the offense and the personnel and the defense. And so I know these guys work for you, and some of these guys might be bad at their job. Some of them might be good. Who knows? But at the end of the day, when I'm not sure, I'm going to just go to the top.
Yeah.
So the answer to that question, no. Pete's not going to, as much as he might say, like, I need the guys who can be honest with me. No, you don't, bro. I don't believe that. I believe Tater, and that's it. I believe Tater's the only guy who can keep it funky. I think everybody else, they know they have to walk on eggshells a little bit because he's the boss. He can fire you. Everybody listening to this show probably has a boss. You can't just go up in your boss's office talking crazy. Hey, no, I think you have me stack the boxes this way, bro. I just don't want to do that like that. I think the boxes look cooler stacked that way. All right, well, Steve, you're fired, right? Like, that's just how that works. I don't think Pete's going to hire people in that way to push back, to push back. Like he says it, but I don't know if from people I talk to, I feel like the execution is not there on like putting people around him who really challenge, some of the core principles that probably need to change for the franchise to be better.
And our last one, how do you think Coach Hurt would do as a defensive coordinator, considering he'd be an in-house kind of hire and knows this team pretty well?
Yeah, I'm probably a little biased because, like I said, I talk to a lot of these assistants, and I would like to see them get a shot, because I just think they have a good mind. Like just talking to Clint a little bit, I have, you can tell, and this is not even a secret. You could tell sometimes when guys are not feeling sometimes what the plan was once. Like I think he was even on our show.
Yeah, he talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, he talked about
Kyler Murray rushing the passer and that.
Correct. Yeah. It was the Kyler Murray game, the first one, the Sunday Night Football game, 2020. And they lost in overtime, and it was the worst pass rush performance. I think I asked him about it. You asked him about it.
He had 3. I think they had like 3 rushes, something crazy. It was he had like 50 dropbacks, maybe like 1 hit.
It was 0 quarterback hits and 50.
0. Okay. Yeah, that's what it was.
Probably the worst pass rush performance ever, like of all time. Disgustingly bad.
No joke.
And I have to go back and listen to Clint's answer, but he almost implied like, yo, I really wasn't on board with that plan, right? Because that probably wasn't what we should have done, and that's good because that plan stunk, right? So like that shows me it's like he knew at least that plan stunk. Like now I don't know his philosophies and everything. I don't get a chance to talk to these guys too much. Talk to them a little bit, but I would just like to see it. I do think what's important, I think, with some of these guys, specifically guys who know the roster really well, in-house hires. And even if you don't know the roster, I think it's gotta be based on merit. Everything's gotta be based on merit. Play a guy because he gives the Seahawks the best chance to win on that day. Not because you coached him or his father or his cousin or you recruited him or you like his shoes or you bench a guy because he made you mad once, or and not to say that Clinton does any of these things. Let me be very clear. I just think in general, whoever they hire, and this would be, I would tell this to him too if he would ever ask me my opinion. Like, your job is to play whoever makes the Seahawks better, because people get in doghouses all the time, and we see it on other teams too. Like, oh, this guy's in the quote unquote doghouse. He's not playing because the coach this. He's not playing that. Like, I felt like a little bit of that happened with Carlos Dunlap this year when he threw the shoe against the Packers. Remember he threw somebody's shoe and got a penalty.
15 yards. Yep.
I feel like his snaps just dropped after that. And not to say that was Clint's call or Ken's call or whoever's call. I just feel like that can't happen. The stuff like that can't happen where, we mad at Carlos, so we can't play him as much. No, play Carlos if he gives you the best chance. Oh, so-and-so cussed me out at the film session. He stormed out. Nah, man, no. Play his ass if it helps you win. I do think that's not just on Seahawks. There's a lot of teams. I hear about stuff like that all the time. It happens in college a lot too. You see guys get in the doghouse. Why so-and-so ain't playing the first half? Oh, violation of team rules. Finds out he was 5 minutes late to a meeting. I just don't think that I think the stakes are too high in the NFL. You play the best guys. Independent of their draft status. Independent of what you traded for them for the most part. You just have to play the best dudes, and that's tough, right? Because you got scouts, you got John Schneider, you got Pete Carroll, you got other coaches. You can probably got a lot of voices in your ear, but I think for Clint, whoever the guy, that would be my advice. You come in here, make it about merit, make it about who practices the best, make it about who gives the Seahawks the best chance on Sunday. Not about draft status, not about trade, not about veteran, nothing. Make it about who gives them the best chance. I think if you do that, and you combine that with some of the things we've talked about, they can be okay. You still need to draft better and get some better personnel, but in terms of the coordinator himself, that part is what he can control. So that would be my advice and my hope if Clint got the job.
Okay.
I know that was good, right? I felt good about that answer.
Yeah, I'm all for it. Clint definitely knows his way. I'm curious about the relationship with him and Pete. I'm curious, like, would he be willing to kind of take a back seat? Because I don't know how much control he has with the position that he was in as the D-line coordinator, D-line coach. I'm sure he had a lot to say, but what does Pete have to say in that regard? And now Pete's saying, we're going to elevate you to be our defensive coordinator. Does that change? Does it stay the same? That would be interesting to see. And maybe Clint's all for it. or maybe he's like, and this is of course if they offered him the opportunity.
Oh, he would jump at it if they.
Okay, good to
He
know. He
wants
would
to be a
jump at it.
defensive coordinator. I think he said that on record before. I'm not even reporting that. He said it.
Okay, well then knowing that information, maybe he is that next guy up, and I'm all for it. I just don't want to be in that position where he doesn't get to run the defense how he sees fit with the talent out there. Because if Pete is, of course, in charge of all that, what is he really doing? Is he just going by what he's being told? Does he have autonomy to run sets, run what he sees, run what he sees could work against this offense coming up, whatever the case may be. So hopefully, I'm asking a lot here because we've seen it for years and years. Pete's just going to do his thing and fire you if it doesn't work out his way. Because as Mike said, he's not firing himself. So I'm all for it. We will see what happens. The offseason just kicked off for us, baby. We are just getting into it.
I think we need to know what personnel say they have in the draft too. Coaches don't get a ton. I think they do a lot more UDFA stuff, but that matters too. I want to know in terms of if Clint got the job, all right, well, so what stuff did Clint control? I know he was big on getting Puna forward, right? Because he recruited him, but did he get some input on the LJ thing, the Malik McDowell thing? Rasheem Green's role has kind of changed. He was different in all 4 years of his career. Was that a Clint thing? Was that a Pete thing? The Carlos thing. You mentioned that Carlos basically complained to the coaching staff, hey man, I want to rush the passer. That's what you guys told me I would do. What did he do? Rush the passer later. Who was in that meeting? Was Clint there? Was it Ken? Was it Pete? I don't know. And stuff like that is little things who had him dropping in the coverage, right? Who had Brian Monet dropping in the coverage, right? I think even Jared Reed when he was here, he was dropping. Who did that? Was that a Clint thing? Was that a Ken thing? Was that a collaboration? I think we have so many questions like that we'd have to answer to know for sure who's going to be a good leader of men and a good schemer. But if I was to be able to sit people down, I would have those. I would get those answers. Hey, which one of y'all drafted LJ? Let's talk. You have to have those type of discussions and figure out who was benching who was playing who wanted to do the bare front as the base 3-4 change. Who did that? Who did that and decided we don't need KJ if we're going to do that? All of these things, there are questions we need to answer to find out who would be good. But yeah, I think, I give Clint a shot. Like I said, we talked for an hour. We're about to wrap it up, but I don't think who the coordinator doesn't matter. I don't know. I don't think so. But I do think the guy who you do need to have, if nothing else, he needs to be able to make do with not a lot of talent. Because I think you should just assume they're not going to be the most talented defense in the league next year. Not even probably top 5 or top 10. But can that guy take a top 15 talented team and make them top 10?
Yep.
If that's the case, hire that guy, whoever the hell it is, whatever the scheme is. If you don't got that, well, Chris will be right back here in January 18th of 2023.
Well, this has been another episode of Seahawks Man to Man. We want to thank all of you out there for listening, watching, combination of the two. We really appreciate it. Also, heads up, Mike, we just hit 1,200 subscribers. So we're climbing up that mountain on the road to 2,000. So we appreciate you guys for telling a friend to tell a friend about the show. All the comments, all the love, we're seeing it. We appreciate it. Anything you want to add, Mike, before we shake?
No, that's dope, man. That's super dope. That's love. We appreciate you guys. The cadence slows down in the offseason a little bit. Probably about go 2 shows a month or something like that. But
there's breaking news every week.
Yeah, when there's big news, we're going to try to talk about it because, as you can see, we can go long on certain topics. We'll probably talk about Russ at some point, what's going on there in the offseason. Give me a little time to do some more reporting on Russ and some of that stuff before I talk about it on the show. But, yeah, 1,200, that's dope, man. Yeah, road to 2,000. Let's do it. See if we can get there before week 1. That would be that would be love, man. We appreciate you guys. We'll all be watching the defensive coordinator search together. We're gonna see. My guess is probably Clint Hurt is probably hired, but who knows? We'll see. But we'll be watching it with you guys. Maybe we'll come back on when they are hired. Who knows? But until then, we'll catch you guys later. We appreciate the love. Catch you guys next time. Peace.